So, time for Saturday's press preview, a first look at tomorrow's front pages. And joining me tonight to check out the headlines, journalist and author Christina Patterson and political commentator Benedict Spence. Hello again. We will speak in a moment after we've had a look at the front pages, starting with the Express, leading with a pledge by the Prime Minister to change the law so that Britain's worst criminals spend their whole life behind bars and that life should mean life. The Sunday Mirror speaks to the family of a baby killed by nurse Lucy Letby, who says the hospital boss at the centre of claims that the case was mishandled should not be allowed his large pension or to escape giving evidence to the coming inquiry. Staying with Letby, the Sunday Times says a senior doctor warned 2 years before she was suspended that the unit where she worked was chaotic, overstretched and unsafe for patients or staff. The Sun on Sunday reports that the Met Police computer system has been hacked, and along with it, details of 47,000 officers and staff have been leaked. The Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been speaking to the Sunday Telegraph and has ruled out any form of wealth tax under a future Labour government. But the Mail says Labour also has secret plans to charge Britain's drivers by the mile to use the country's roads. And the Sunday People reports that Philip Schofield is in talks to stage a TV comeback after quitting ITV's This Morning in a row over his relationship with a colleague. And finally, the Star leads with a strange story about naked ramblers and what it calls sex-mad swingers roaming Sherwood Forest. It's all a far cry from the days of Robin Hood and his merry men. And don't forget, by scanning the QR code you see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us discussing them. And doing that with me tonight, Christina Patterson and Benedict Spence. Lots of different stories in the papers and a late one for many of the front pages. Nadine Dorries, Christina, finally saying she will go. We knew that she was going to go eventually. It's taken her quite a few weeks, 10 weeks I think it is. But we didn't quite expect the scathing resignation letter.
What a dreadful woman she is. Really, what a dreadful woman. The nerve she has had to be carry on being paid by the taxpayer to do a job she hasn't done for a very long time, while raking in money as a TV presenter and whatever else she's doing at the moment. And then to write this incredibly infantile, stamping her foot letter to Rishi Sunak, who she clearly blames for her, as she would see it, accelerated departure. I don't know exactly what she felt she was hanging on for, but she sulked when she didn't get the honour she felt she had been promised by Boris Johnson. Though anyone who ever believed any promise by Boris Johnson is clearly not the most intelligent person ever, because it might help to look at his track record. She's been sitting around doing nothing for her constituents, nothing for representative democracy in this country. And now she's written a truly awful letter to Rishi Sunak, basically just kind of, yeah, boo sucks, just ghastly. Now, I'm no major fan of Rishi Sunak, and of course I agree with many of her criticisms of the Tory government, which has been pretty disastrous for the last 13 years. But to blame Rishi Sunak for the state of the UK at the moment, when he's only been in office for under a year, is absolutely crazy. It's just a complete scattergun. She is a real disgrace, actually. And I will be delighted when she has disappeared from public life and is just doing her silly pontificating about whatever she wants to pontificate about. I can't wait to see the back of her. But she has hung on for so long to this job she hasn't been doing, and that has really put all MPs into disrepute.
Wow, a scathing attack on the Prime Minister by Nadine Dorries, a scathing attack on Nadine Dorries by Christina Patterson. Benedict, that was a withering attack, wasn't it? Do you think, judging by what Christina says, that the actual damage from this letter on the Prime Minister is fairly limited, would you say?
Are you sure that was scathing? I thought Christina was rather measured. I almost thought she was on the fence, frankly. I think, I have to say, it was... Reading it can something be ghastly and magnificent at the same time? I'm not quite sure. I think in the interests of some balance, there were a few points that I thought many people would read in the letter and say, yes, they can understand that, what some of the criticisms are. I'll just sort of read them very quickly. When she says that you sit in the office of Prime Minister unelected without a single vote, not even from your MPs, with no mandate from the people, and the government is adrift. I think that even a lot of critics of Nadine Dorries would probably look at that and say, yes, there is a lot of truth there. This does seem to be a government that is sort of shuffling, as she puts it, a zombie government towards the general election. However, there is also the magnificent line where she thanks the Prime Minister for calling her personally when he announced his cabinet to give her the bad news, although she refused to take the call. And I think that that just sort of gives you some idea of the petulance and the tone of the rest of this letter. And as somebody else has put it, I think it is in fact in The Spectator, which sadly we don't get to review this evening. I think what she has done is demonstrated all the many reasons why, in one letter, why Rishi Sunak did not take up the opportunity to ennoble her and put her in the House of Lords. I think that this is very unbecoming of somebody. I mean, we all get a bit of a good laugh out of it. It is rather amusing to see any MP, let alone Nadine Dorries, sort of blow her top, blow her lid quite to this extent. But also, again, Christina is right. There's talking here about how he's at fault for X, Y, Z. And this is from Boris Johnson's single largest cheerleader. I mean, the chutzpah of it is magnificent, as I say, and yet so unbecoming of somebody who was supposed to be an elected MP and fancied themselves a member of the House of Lords.
OK, all right, fascinating stuff. Front page of the Sunday Telegraph as well, a picture of Nadine Dorries, but also this very interesting story, Christina. The Shadow Chancellor making a bid to woo businesses and the wealthy.
Yeah, I think this is the most interesting story on the front pages, actually, and I think it's the biggest, because this is big news that Rachel Reeves has now said there will be no wealth tax. She's not going to increase capital gains tax. She's not going to increase income tax on the highest earners. It's basically kind of steady as she goes. We're not going to rock the markets. We're going to do everything we can to encourage investment in the country. And most importantly, we're not going to frighten the horses. We're going to show that we are economically competent, because that's always the Labour bugbear. And clearly under Jeremy Corbyn, the fear was that Labour were not going to be competent and economically competent. And since Jeremy Corbyn was promising to pretty much nationalise everything, that was probably a fairly well-founded fear. But what's really interesting about this is that she has given the interview to the Telegraph, and they have put it in the front page, and there was no sneering in that piece. Obviously, I haven't read any inside comment there may be about the interview, but she is being taken, and Labour are being taken, but she in particular is being taken very, very seriously by business leaders who now expect there to be a Labour government, and apparently a business breakfast or something at Labour Party conference is now already way oversubscribed and sold out. So I think this is an interview from someone who knows she's going to be Chancellor of the Exchequer and wants to show that she is serious. And she is serious. And although she also says, basically, there's not going to be much money to spend, and any Labour ministers who want to spend money will have to show where money will be saved from elsewhere in order to spend it. It's a very, very measured approach. And I think it will reassure a lot of people who are feeling very worried about the UK economy at the moment that it will be moving into relatively steady, safe hands.
OK, Benedict?
Yeah, it's a continuation of a theme that we've heard sort of sotto voce, but consistently from a lot of Labour frontbenchers for a time. Earlier in the year, Wes Streeting was talking to the King's Fund, I believe it was, and he was saying that actually we can't be under any illusions that the NHS is magnificent as the envy of the world, and that all it needs is more money. What is going to be needed is reform, and that we need to be serious and honest with people about this, that there isn't going to be the opportunity to have sort of massive, big spending pledges. And that means a lot of sort of what you would consider the Labour heartlands perhaps aren't going to be very happy. And this is, I think, it is a very measured approach. And it's a cautious approach. And I know that Keir Starmer is often accused of being overcautious, of being too sort of reticent on lots of things. But I think it's because he understands, and his front bench understands, that a lot of the people to whom they are directly appealing as sort of typical Labour voters will not necessarily see too many benefits in the short term under a Labour government, because there isn't the capacity for that massive uptick in spending. Rachel Reeves does cite the tax burden, which again is another thing, that one of the few salient points that Nadine Dorries also cited in her letter as being too high for growth to sort of be happening, which is what you need. So there can't be these sort of massive sweeping attacks on the rich. You need to be clever about where you can find investment. And again, in this Telegraph piece, it talks about going out and finding green jobs, sort of an investment, and trying to steal away business from the US and the continent. And I think that that's going to be the theme for the next couple of years, because Labour, I think, needs to be very wary about basically walking in to the trap that has been inherited by Rishi Sunak, which is that there is no growth and there is no money. And actually, the idea of sort of going full on free market has been completely done over by Liz Truss. So you're very limited in terms of what your options are. And the people who vote for you are going to be in a lot more economic and social pain for a lot longer than they might otherwise want. And you're going to have to be straight with them in order to maintain their support.
OK, I just want to get this story in before the break. It's on the front of the Sunday Express. Nadine Dorries is on the front as well. She's accused the Prime Minister, of course, of leading a zombie government. He is arguing in the Express that he is about to crack down on crime. Christina, tell us about this. Life means life.
Oh, God, that old chestnut. It's what people do when they've messed up absolutely everything else. I don't hold Rishi Sunak personally responsible, as I said before, for the appalling state of the nation and its finances. He inherited a mess, and he's done, relatively well in steadying the ship in disastrous circumstances. But he is being told by his advisors the thing to do now is to go for the culture wars stuff, crackdowns on crime. What on earth is a crackdown? Can anyone explain to me what a crackdown is, apart from some ridiculous newspaper headline saying, "Ooh, evil people should be punished"? As a father, I think evil people should be punished. What an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. And it is so insulting, for example, to non-parents like me, to think that the only people who would care about crime or other people would be people who would actually bother to produce a child themselves. I think the whole thing is utterly ridiculous at every level. And I wish his advisors would stop him doing and saying this kind of thing, because it's really out of character. Rishi Sunak is a nerd who sits behind a computer and looks at spreadsheets. He is not someone who talks about, hanging, flogging and all the rest of it. And he's being told by his advisors, or at least they are leaking stories like this, and it just makes him look ridiculous.
Yeah, the quote on the front of the Express, Benedict, I believe that for the most despicable criminals who are plainly just evil, life needs to mean life. It's as simple as that.
Yes, and I find it slightly frustrating because this is in response, I think, to, for example, Wayne Couzens and Lucy Letby, sort of two very high-profile cases recently. And nobody actually anticipates that either of those two people will ever see the outside of a prison again. For the most vilest of murderers and criminals, they don't ever get out. The issue, actually, that I think is sort of mid to low-level crime, it's that sort of broken windows theory. It is the fact that police officers routinely don't respond to petty thefts, burglaries, that sort of thing. I think you do a lot better as Prime Minister if, rather than go after the big targets, which these are people who are never going to get out of prison. These are people who are almost certainly going to die in prison, serial killers, that of the sort. Actually, the crime that affects most people on a day-to-day basis, low-level crime to mid-level crime, assaults, burglaries, what be it, isn't getting addressed in the way that it ought to be by the police in this country. And that is where the Tories are losing support on crime and punishment. Not on high-profile cases like this, which can occur under any kind of government in any kind of circumstances. Serial killers will always find a way of doing that. It's about catching them. What people are irritated by is the absence of policing at a basic level. Now, if the Tories were to deal with that, I think that would do a lot more for them in the polls than these sort of silly headlines. But of course, the problem with that is it costs an awful lot of money and it takes an awful lot of time. And Rishi Sunak doesn't really have either of those things. Welcome
back to the press preview. Benedict and Christina are with us. Benedict, front of the Sun on Sunday. Another hacking scandal. The Metropolitan Police targeted.
Yes, up to 47,000 personnel could have had details leaked. The Met say that one of their online systems has been compromised, and that includes details including photographs, including ID numbers, vetting levels, so ranks, that sort of thing. It's not yet known how this happened, as far as I'm aware, or who might have accessed it. It's thought to have come through a third party, I think, that the Met works with. But the National Crime Agency has been brought in to investigate because, as you can imagine, releasing the details, potentially losing the details of 47,000 serving police officers is an incredible security breach. If it were to fall into the hands of organized criminals, terrorists, or people with a grudge, with an axe to grind. And of course, this comes in the wake of the revelations that all of the details of the Northern Irish Constabulary were revealed very recently. So it's, as far as we know right now, it is not potentially not a huge issue, but it's something that could become a huge issue. And I suppose it must raise real alarm bells that this has now happened twice in a very short space of time. The important details about ordinary serving police officers have just suddenly been made available or released to the public at large. That doesn't bode very well for the security within these police forces themselves.
Yeah, well, we've had a response tonight from the Met Police. Let's just show that to you. We've been made aware of unauthorised access to the IT system of a Met supplier. We're working with the company to understand if there has been any security breach relating to the Metropolitan Police data. The company has access to names, ranks, photos, vetting levels and pay numbers for officers and staff. The company did not hold personal information such as addresses, phone numbers or financial details. Security measures have been taken by the MPS as a result of this report. The MPS has reported the matter to the National Crime Agency. The Information Commissioner's Office is also aware. Christina, the football scandal in Spain.
Yes, well, at long last, he has, Luis Rubiales has been suspended. I'm not one to instantly call for people to be fired from their jobs, but I do think this was disgraceful. And it really was an archetypal example of the kind of casual sexism, but more than sexism, that that just displays someone's attitude towards what is essentially sexual assault. If you kiss someone on the lips in what was looked very sexual, that's not just a little thing. I mean, it's possible to give someone a peck on the cheeks and say, oh, I was being affectionate. This was pretty full on. And Jenny Formosa she's made it very clear that it was unwelcome, that she didn't like it. And I think she was really shocked. They'd been through this incredible thing. They'd won the World Cup, and then she basically got instantly sexually assaulted in front of the whole world, which was sort of upsetting and humiliating for her. And she couldn't say that was ghastly and it was completely inappropriate. So, and all the way through, he has claimed he didn't do anything wrong. He then claims he asked her permission to give her a peck, which she denies. And even yesterday, he said, I think 5 times, I will not resign. Yeah. So I'm glad he's been suspended. It's taken a very long time.
Yeah, still in post tonight, of course. We're going to have to leave it there. We haven't got time to talk about Philip Schofield. And in fact, the Mirror and the Sunday People both splash on that story, but we don't know what TV show he might return to.